welcome to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Keating. In this podcast, we talk about it all, our parenting, our partnering, and our professional lives, because they are all a part of us, and we were never meant to do this alone. Hey friends, and welcome back to the Heartful Parent Podcast. I am so grateful that you are here. And today we're going to do something just a little bit different. I don't have a guest today, so we are just going to spend some time together. And I'd like this to be an ode to imperfection, if you will. And the reason for that is because I am coming off a difficult week of parenting in my own right, in my own family. And I know that I'm probably not the only one. And I know I'm not the only one that is thinking that or saying that right now. You know, wherever you are in the country, wherever you are in the world, maybe it was a rough week for you too. And if not this week, it's been a different week, right? When you had a difficult time with the job and the work that is parenting. Because yes, it is joyful, but it is also sometimes hard and scary, and we don't get it right. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure on us as parents to get it right all the time. And I think about that in the context of the work that I do, because I don't ever want to send parents the message that you have to be perfect, you have to do everything quote unquote right, nor do I ever want to give the impression that I get it right all the time. I don't. You know, over the years of doing this work, I have done what guest Caitlin Escobar described as reparenting myself. I have built my toolbox through trainings and education and practice, real world practice. But I don't always get it right. Even with that deeper toolbox and all of the sort of information available to me, I still get it wrong. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a moment in the not so distant past that I got it wrong. I got it really wrong. And yet we're going to talk about sort of why that didn't destroy my relationship with my child and how to kind of fix it when you get it wrong. So I'm not going to give a ton of backstory into this, withholding details to protect the guilty on my child's side, not on my side. So what I'll say is we're at the end of the school year. I have a kiddo who deals with ADHD. School is not always super easy. The end of the school year, the end of any semester can bring about quite a bit of stress, quite a bit of anxiety, and, it's not always my favorite time of the year until it's actually over. So that's just sort of the context for where we are this week. So in that moment and in that context, I got pretty upset with my teenager this week. And we talked about it. We had numerous conversations about what was going on. And I didn't feel like I was getting the answers from her that I wanted. And really, that's more about me than it is about her. But I was looking for a particular response, particular attitude, reassurances, if you will, and I wasn't getting them. And she was sort of shut down in the conversation a little bit eventually. And so we were actually driving at one point. I was using all the tools in my toolbox, using every reserve of calmness and patience that I had. And they weren't working. We pulled into the garage, parked the car. I got out. She said, I'm going to sit in the car for a few minutes. And I was at this point internally feeling pretty upset. And so I went into my office and I sat down in my chair and I sort of looked around me, in this place where I do the work that I do, where I help parents. And my internal dialogue was saying, like, calm down, take a break, take a pause. And yet I was also having an argument with myself because I didn't want to take a break and I didn't want to take a pause. And I wanted to let my child know kind of what I was thinking and what I was feeling. And it was almost like I had an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. And, the angel was like the better knowing. That was my parent coach, right? I had my own parent coach sitting on one shoulder. And then I had my big emotions and sort of big feelings sitting on the other shoulder. And in this particular instance, those big feelings won out. And I sort of huffed my way out to the garage and said, get out of the car. And I made my daughter get out of the car and we went into the family room. And you guys, as I was doing this, I knew what I was doing. And I recognized that this was not the best approach. And yet I couldn't stop myself. And I'm wondering if any of you have ever been in that moment where you're like, I know I shouldn't be doing this. I know I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm saying it anyway. And again, that inner dialogue, that inner argument was happening as I sat her down on the couch. And I said to her, I am a believer in positive parenting, and that is not what's about to happen. And y'all, I have to own it. I then lit into her. I was so mad, and that anger was coming from a place of fear and frustration and disbelief. And how could you see this differently than I see this? And I lost it. And I'm going to own that on this podcast in this ode to imperfection. I lost it. And I saw her slump down and I saw her head droop. And before too long, she was in tears, and then I was in tears. And then the parent coach on my shoulder won out, and I went, holy shit, what did I just do? I asked her to sort of come closer to me, which she did, and we sort of fell into one another's arms, and I held her. And we, and I said, I'm so sorry. And we kind of began the process of repair. Within 10 minutes, that repair was complete. We were in a good place again. I was calm. She was calm. We had sort of reached an agreement on next steps. And then I went upstairs and said to my husband, you're never going to believe what just happened. I completely lit into our kid. I was like, how did you not hear it? And he said he didn't. So the door was closed. Maybe I wasn't as loud as I thought I was, or he just couldn't hear it because of the door and whatever. But I fully confessed to him and said, not my best parenting moment. And he kind of appropriately called me out and kind of laughed with me and said, is everything okay now? Which it was. So why am I telling you this story? Well, one, because I think it's important for you to know that we all screw up sometimes. Yes, even the parent coach with the inner dialogue who knew what I was supposed to be doing didn't do it in the moment. I did not practice what many of you have heard me refer to as brain-safe parenting. For about 8 minutes, I went rogue. I was unleashing my own stress in a way that was not helpful. So later, when I had a moment to reflect and kind of think about this and think about why did the repair work as well as it did? And my daughter and I have talked about this since that day. Why is it that we are okay so quickly? How were we able to get back to that good space as quickly as we were? And so here's what I want to share with you. I want to share the 3 reasons that I think we were able to get back to that place and why I was able to move forward with my tools and my strategies and my skills and the positive parenting that I hold near and dear to my heart. And here's what I arrived at. Okay, so number 1, the reason that blow up did not destroy or seriously damage our relationship is because my primary focus in parenting is always connection. It's on building connection. It's on spending time. It's on sort of meeting my kids where they are at. It's on building that relationship in a really healthy, loving way. And I believe that focus on connection, that deep investment that I have made in connection with both of my kids is what made this sort of outburst of mine, this anomaly, not result in significant and lasting destruction. We were able to bounce back from that because of the underlying foundation of connection. And so this is an invitation to you to sort of evaluate, what is the investment that you put into connection? Do you spend one-on-one time with your kids? If they're little, are you spending it with them every day? If they're tweens, like from maybe age 8 up to 12, are you spending it with them multiple times a week? And if they are teens, are you spending it with them multiple times a month? What kind of time are you investing? And when you spend that time, is it with a phone in front of you? Are you watching screens? Because even if you're doing that one-on-one together, right, it's not really what we call special time in the world of positive discipline. That is time that you are having fun and that you're spending together, but it's not connection time. It's not special time. Now, if maybe after the show is over, you're spending 10 or 15 minutes like talking about it and digging into it, that can be special time. As I said, this is my invitation to you to really get real and evaluate your investment in connection and how well that's paying off. Are you letting them decide what you do sometimes? Are you listening to them, hearing them, seeing them for who they are? What is your foundation of connection? Is it a strong foundation or is it a house of cards? And so that's number 1. Number 2 in all of this, and why I believe we were able to get back to good as quickly as we were, is because of the 4 R's of recovery that I know and practice. And this is actually something, there's a video on this inside the Heartful Parent Academy, all about how we recover from mistakes and how we can teach our children to recover from mistakes. But we have to teach it by modeling first. So in this moment, after I had calmed down, after I had detonated the charge, if you will, I recognized that I had made a mistake. And let's be honest, I knew I was making a mistake as I was making it. But I recognized that I had made a mistake, and I got really specific in taking full responsibility for that mistake. And so I said to my child, listen, I just lost it. I said, I let my fear and my frustration get the best of me, and I went against everything that I know and everything that I teach, and I just lit into you. I yelled at you. I shamed you. I told you all the things that were on my brain, but I did that Like I told you my feelings, but not in a productive way. Okay, so that's step number 2. So step number 1 was to recognize the mistake, which I did. Step number 2 was to take full and specific responsibility. Now, I want to be really clear that when you take full and specific responsibility, that doesn't mean saying, so I did this, but let's be honest, like you deserved it. I was very careful about the way that I took that responsibility, and I didn't put the ownership for that on my child. Step number 3 is I apologized. I said, I am so sorry that I did that. I knew better. I let my emotions get the better of me. And then I looked at step number 4, which is to resolve it, right? To focus on solutions. And in this case, the solutions needed to come from me. And I said, first of all, I'm going to take some time to go calm down further. And I will not speak to you like that again. I recognize that I need to listen to my own sort of inner wisdom. And I'm really sorry that I didn't. And I'm going to work very hard to do that moving forward. Now, does that mean, once I've made that repair that I will never screw up again? No. Inevitably, I'm going to be making another repair for some other mistake at some point in probably the not too distant future. But I made this repair and I owned what I did. I apologized for it unequivocally. And I, made an effort to resolve it. Okay, so that's the second reason why I think that we were able to get back to good as quickly as we did. And so I'm going to invite you to, take notes. Go back and listen to this episode again. Write down what those steps of a good repair are, the 4 R's of recovery, and practice them. Model them. Teach them. When you mess up, own it. Some of us as adults, let's be really honest about this. We are terrible at good apologies. We make all sorts of apologies that are not really apologies. We have to knock it off, right? We have to knock it off and make good repairs. The third reason that I think that we're able to get back to good, from a relationship standpoint, we were pretty much back to good, like I said, within about 10 minutes. But from a parenting standpoint, and from sort of how bad I felt about it, we weren't fully back to good until probably the next day. And that is because it took me some time to kind of process what I had done, because I did feel really bad about it. And here's how I got myself back to good. And so I want to invite you to do this frequently. And that is, I offered myself forgiveness and grace. And we don't do that often enough. We let the negative messaging, the negative voice in our head, the critic, tell us all the reasons why why we're bad parents, or, that we screwed it up. How could you have screwed it up so badly? Like, we let that voice run rampant until it just kind of, I guess, dies down, or we do something else that gets it angry again. But what we don't do is talk to ourselves intentionally about the need to give ourselves forgiveness just as much as we need to forgive our kids for whatever the transgression was, right? We do need to offer that to them too, but then we need to offer it to ourselves. And so I did that with sort of recognizing a couple of things. One is that in parenting, not only will we never get it perfect, but we shouldn't try to be perfect. It is actually important for our children to see us screw up and then to hear us recover, right? To go through those four R's of recovery. It is important for them to see that happen. Now, does that mean you should go yell at your kid just so that you can make the repair? Of course not. Of course not. Life and parenting will present plenty of its own opportunities for making recoveries without us manufacturing them. But it is important for our kids to see those mistakes happen and then to see us recognize the opportunity for growth from those mistakes. The more that we can model those imperfect moments, again, not manufactured ones, they're going to happen anyway, but the more we can model those and then model handling them well, the better off we'll be. And the second reason, or the second sort of takeaway for me from this idea of giving ourselves forgiveness and grace, was just the recognition that good enough is okay. There's a book I read a number of years ago called Good Enough is the New Perfect. And I love that phrase. I cannot take credit for it, but I love it because it really is the idea that we've got to stop seeking perfection because A, it doesn't exist, and B, when we fall short of it, which we will inevitably do, it makes us feel bad about ourselves. And as I've already mentioned, we're not good at giving ourselves forgiveness and grace. Good enough is okay. If you can show up and be a good enough parent, you're winning the day, right? If you can show up as a heartful parent who tries, you do your best, you make repairs when you need to, that's good enough. And that is okay. So those were really my big takeaways from why this big blow up of mine resolved pretty quickly, both in terms of my relationship with my kid and in terms of my own view of my parenting, right? To recap, it worked okay because connection was the precursor. It was the foundation upon which my relationship with my daughter is built. And so I was able to recover more quickly and rely on the strength of that connection. Second, I made a good repair. I followed the 4 R's of recovery. And third, I gave myself and my kid forgiveness and grace. That's how we got back to good. So I hope this is helpful to you. I hope this, maybe opens up some space for you to give yourself grace and to recognize that you're doing okay and good enough is just fine. Good enough is heartful, and that's all we've got to be. On that note, I will sign off. If this was interesting to you and the 4 R's of recovery was interesting to you, please check out the Heartful Parent Academy. You can find a link to it and more information about it on my website. It is 13 modules of information about self-care, meaningful self-care, partnering in a healthy way if you are parenting with a partner, parenting with heart and positivity and positive discipline, and safety, child sexual abuse prevention. It's a really phenomenal. The reviews of members who are in there love it, and we'd love to have you join us. On that note, I will look forward to seeing you next week. Take care and happy parenting. Let me know if I can support you.